In this video, I talk about all of the things on Balachandra that have failed or needed to be replaced, sailing and cruising full-time, non-stop since leaving Nova Scotia and all throughout the Caribbean. Last time, on Sailing Balachandra, we left Santiago, Cuba and sailed into the archipelago known as the Garden of the Queen. If you're new to the channel, I'm Dan and my partner is Noel, and we are Sailing Balachandra. We sailed from Nova Scotia, Canada to the Caribbean, and we're sailing around the Caribbean. Currently, we are in Cuba. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, just go below this video, look for the big red subscribe button, and press that button. In this video, I'd like to talk about all the things that have broken or needed to be replaced or failed on us since we left Nova Scotia. We haven't been really hard on our gear, but there's been some hard sails and some rough days, and things just do wear out. So in this video, I'd like to cover all the things we can think of that have broken, worn out, or needed to be replaced on our boat since we left Nova Scotia, of full-time cruising non-stop from Nova Scotia to the Caribbean and throughout the Caribbean, all of the things that have failed due to overuse or just rough weather or just simply failure due to longevity. Hopefully this information can help you out with your cruising life and give you some idea of what to expect when you're cruising full-time in the Caribbean. Of course, with a diesel engine, regular oil changes are absolutely necessary. I honestly do lose count, as it is regular engine maintenance for me, just like owning a car. It needs to be done from time to time. Here in the Caribbean, whenever I see large quantities of diesel engine oil for sale for a good price, I always pick it up and store it on board for the next oil change. I also keep at least 1 or 2 1-liter bottles of engine oil around the boat in case the engine oil level drops at any point, as having low oil on our Yanmar will lead to low oil pressure, which will make the engine quit. Another item of engine maintenance is the impeller. I changed our Yanmar's impeller before leaving Nova Scotia. Roughly just over 1 year into cruising, we decided that it was a good time to check the status of the impeller. When I removed the old impeller, there wasn't any serious damage, but there was some creasing on the fins, which indicates that an impeller change was necessary. Although I have spares, we were able to buy a brand new impeller here in the Caribbean, and we did change the impeller before arriving in Cuba. I changed our Yanmar's engine belt before leaving Nova Scotia so that we would have a fresh engine belt for our trip. This engine belt has lasted well over a year and is still going strong, and I've adjusted the alternator position to tighten the belt only once. I feel no need to change this engine belt yet, although it is starting to slightly squeak. That said, I do have extra engine belts on hand in order to change the belt at any time if needed. I cleaned and changed our fuel filters before leaving Nova Scotia. We have 2 fuel filters, one on the engine and the other a Raycor filter. But now, after buying diesel in several different ports and cruising full-time in the Caribbean, the time had come to change our filters, which I did very recently, and found the old filters to be quite dirty, especially the Raycor filter. We've had to replace one of our shrouds since leaving Nova Scotia. Of course, carrying a spare shroud with you is not sensible, and a broken shroud is a good indicator that your rigging may need to be replaced. However, we knew that our broken shroud was due to it being too loose, which caused it to fail. Our standing rigging is all well within its serviceable life. However, when cruising full-time like we are, having something fail in your standing rigging is always a possibility. It must be considered if you're planning to live aboard and cruise full-time. Your running rigging is constantly being used, exposed to the sun and the salty environment, and these lines do eventually wear. It's a good idea to carry some spare lines in case any running rigging were to fail. You would have a line to replace it. Sail repair is probably going to come up at some point in your full-time cruising. We have an older 100% jib that has needed to be repaired several times, and even though our main is quite rock solid, we did have one stitch come out in the main during our 5-day passage from the USVIs to Grenada. Luckily, a friend of ours was able to lend us their Barracuda sewing machine, and we were able to easily stitch our main back together. It's a good idea to carry sail repair tape and extra Dacron, and if you have one, a sewing awl or even a Barracuda sewing machine so that you can do spot sail repairs while you're cruising. If your sails are fairly new, chances are you may not have to do any sail repair for several years. However, sails are a disposable item on a sailboat, and they do wear out, and you need to be prepared. I've mentioned this before in other videos, but it's a good idea to carry at least one full complete spare running light for when your running lights fail, and they will fail. Running lights is probably one of the highest failure items on our boat. Your seacocks will constantly need to be exercised. Every month or two, I go through the entire boat and make sure that all of the seacocks are still moving fluidly and not getting stuck. Barnacles and other sea life like to live inside your seacocks as well, so when scrubbing the hull, it's a good idea to check your seacocks to make sure they're not clogged with sea life. We've had to replace all of the connections to our solar panels at least once during our cruising. Exposure to the sun and salt air can eventually destroy any electrical connection on the exterior part of your boat. When I noticed a dramatic dip in our solar amperage, I tried covering each panel with a blanket to see which one was not delivering a charge. Sure enough, one of them did not work. I ended up replacing all of the connections, and now we are maximizing the power from our solar panels. This was an unexpected maintenance item for us, but one that we were easily able to fix. Make sure you have a few extra fuse holders for your solar battery bank. We have fuses all through the boat, but the only fuse that ever seems to fail is the fuse on our solar connection. That's the connection between the solar panel regulator and the 12-volt battery bank. It seems when the engine and alternator are running, there's a surge of power which meets the solar regulator from the reverse side. It can cause this fuse to overheat and melt down. One solution is to purchase a more heavy-duty fuse and fuse holder for this. However, we've learned, as long as we turn off our solars before we run our engine, there's no way this charge can build and cause this fuse to fail. But just in case, it's always a good idea to carry extra fuse holders with you as you travel. Our anchor windlass switch has been temperamental from time to time. I've had to remove the switch and clean the connections inside at least twice since leaving Nova Scotia and cruising the Caribbean. If you have a similar windlass switch, you want to be familiar with the operation and cleaning of the connection points in case this happens to you. I was able to purchase an entirely separate windlass switch to outright replace this one. However, I have not needed to do so as the old switch continues to run. About halfway through our cruising in the Caribbean, all of the insides of our Magma marine barbecue had deteriorated due to exposure and needed to be thrown away. We were able to purchase Magma's replacement parts and rebuild the inside of our barbecue. Another cruising boat had a brand new Magma barbecue which also failed roughly around the same time, needing a full replacement of all of the inside parts. If you're going to cruise with a Magma barbecue, you may want to consider purchasing and carrying spare parts for your barbecue. Even though they are made for the marine environment, they do not last. We have two propane regulators on Balachandra, one for our primary propane tanks, which fuels our galley stove. We also use small camping-style barbecue propane cylinders on our Magma boat barbecue. Both of our propane regulators failed after roughly 9 to 12 months into our full-time cruising. This is the first time I've had a propane regulator fail on me, and I assume it's due to salt corrosion and the marine environment. However, it could simply just be due to overuse, but we use the galley stove much more often than we use the barbecue. But both propane regulators failed at roughly the same time. We were lucky to purchase new propane regulators in the Eastern Caribbean, as there are marine stores scattered about and you can find one. The seals on our Jabsco toilets do go from time to time. It's a good idea to carry extra toilet seals with you when you cruise full time. Doing anything that involves dismantling the toilet is a nasty job. Make sure you have a bottle of bleach and rubber gloves on hand to clean up afterwards. But changing some of these toilet seals is probably going to happen, especially if you plan to cruise for over a year or more. The replacement seals will be much cheaper to buy anywhere in the US or Canada. My recommendation would be to purchase extra toilet seals before going off to cruise full time. We've also had to replace some of the seals in our galley faucet. You don't want your galley faucet to start dripping on you, as depending on your cruising area, fresh water can be precious and hard to come by. You don't want the water pump to continue running and lose all your water down the drain. It's a good idea to locate and carry extra seals for your galley faucet along with you as you cruise. I like to carry an abundance of marine-grade electrical connectors with us as we cruise in case any electrical work needs to be done for instances where cockpit instruments need to be worked on or electrical devices such as fans fail and need to be replaced. These things will happen and you will find yourself crimping and heat-shrinking wires from time to time as you cruise full-time. These are essential items, and I would not cruise the Caribbean without well stocking the boat with electrical connections and extra wiring for electrical work and replacement. I've gone through literally almost 100 of these heat shrink connectors since we left Nova Scotia. We've had to change countless LED light bulbs on the boat. LED light bulbs are meant to last longer than tungsten light bulbs or halogen light bulbs. However, in the marine environment, LED light bulbs can corrode and they may not last that long. We stocked up very well with LED light bulbs before leaving Nova Scotia, and we have been changing them on all of our running lights and some of our interior cabin lights. Make sure you have lots of spare LED bulbs to change your old LED bulbs as you cruise. We've had to spray our Dodger and Bimini many times to keep them waterproof. If your Dodger and Bimini are new, they are probably very waterproof, but over time, the ability for this canvas to repel water will eventually degrade. Starbright sells a water repellent product you can spray on them to restore it. I would carry at least 2 bottles of this spray with you as you cruise, as eventually your Dodger and Bimini will begin to drip water through the canvas. The spray works very well and lasts for several months, but it is a constant maintenance item. We've had at least one red gasoline can fail on us since leaving Nova Scotia. You can buy very high quality, decent gasoline cans. I think ours was Canadian made. However, over time, our red gasoline can did eventually split open due to exposure to the elements and needed to be replaced. Be prepared to purchase a new gasoline can at some point during your cruising. Luckily, red gasoline cans are easy to come by, and you should be able to find one unless you're in a very remote place. We've had lots of issues with outboard motors and dinghies since leaving Nova Scotia. Now, after cruising for about a year and a half, we're on our second outboard motor, and most of our friends who are full-time cruising are also on their second motor. Outboard motors are clearly not meant to be used every single day. Outboard motors do need constant attention to make sure they continue running and getting your dinghy from the boat to the dock to the beautiful beach and back safely without failing. Depending on your motor, there are several maintenance items that you really need to pay attention to. Of course, there's oil changes with 4-stroke motors and the shaft oil on any outboard motor. We've had to change the propeller more than once due to minor impacts, and recently we've had a spun prop on our 5-horsepower 2-stroke Tohatsu. Dinghies are also another high maintenance item when cruising full time. Our dinghy has needed several repairs. We're constantly doing something to keep our dinghy floating, whether re-gluing the transom or adding extra supports. I've recently done an entire video on all of the repairs that we've done to our dinghy, and you can watch it just by clicking the link above. Well, that's the end of this week's video on all of the things that have broken, failed, or gave up the ghost here on Balachandra since we left Nova Scotia. We've been sailing non-stop, cruising all through the Caribbean, and we've really figured out over time what parts of the boat need special attention and need to be maintained and watched carefully, as not everything on a cruising boat will last forever, and hopefully this information will help you out if you ever plan to cruise full-time in the Caribbean as well. Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, just go below this video, look for the big red subscribe button, press that button, and if you want, you can leave a like or a comment below. And if you haven't checked out our Patreon page, it's always a good time to do so. Patreon is a place where you can give back if you like what we do and you want to support us. Thanks. See you later.